Hey there, Art2 people. The purpose of the video we're about to watch is to show you how I will incorporate the shading techniques we used before into your final artwork. Before I begin, let me make a couple points. Number one, if your design is messy and can benefit from having all the flaws like extra lines, eraser marks, or bent up paper disappear, then maybe you should trace your design on a clean piece of drawing paper. You can use a window or a screen for this. Number two, this is the final artwork. So this is the time where we put on our creative thinking caps and strive to do something to a high level of quality and neatness. No shortcuts, no unfinished artworks. You will need patience because this is going to take many of you a considerable amount of time, especially in order to do it to a high level of quality. Number three, you will need time management skills. Don't cram at the end and don't rush in the beginning. Be methodical and intentional with your time. Pace it out in stages. Work on it over multiple sessions and set goals for what you will complete during each session. Number four, try to build motivation in yourself. You have to actually sit down and do this. Try not to let all the distractions take you away from having creative art time. Don't just go through the motions. Give this task your real creative energy. Number five, while you work, look for ways to throw in a little bit of extra personal creativity. Look for ways to personalize it, spice it up. Number six, be critical. Search for ways to improve the success of the artwork. Look for flaws that you can fix. Be a little bit of a perfectionist. Number seven, don't be the type of perfectionist that causes you to give up, become overwhelmed, or where you just don't make real progress. This is no good to you. It's not going to be perfect no matter what you do, and that's okay. There's a fine line between the type of perfectionist that strives to do something as well as they can and one where nothing is ever good enough, so I might as well give up. And lastly, number 9, watch the entire video because I will give tips and pointers throughout the process in order to help you. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at a couple other pieces of paper and then I'll speed up the video. What I'm showing you now are the shading techniques we practiced before. When I shade my artwork, I will most likely use all of these, plus more. Remember, there are countless variations of marks you can use to shade and create value. So as you work on your project, I want you to keep trying to invent new marks. If you need to, test them out on a separate sheet of paper before you add them to your final artwork. These last pictures are here to remind you that it's okay to have some resource images to loosely inspire you as you add details and shading to the subjects in your artwork. Okay, let's do some shading. While this is playing, I just want to give you guys a little perspective on the amount of time it took to complete this artwork. This video is about 16 minutes long or so, but I sped it up quite a bit. And I'm doing all the narration for this video after I had already recorded all of the video of me shading the artwork. All of the recorded video adds up to about an hour and a half. And I only complete about half of the artwork. So if I were to complete the full artwork, I can guess that it would take me about 3 hours to do it. So if this artwork would take me about 3 hours to complete, when you guys go to do this artwork on your own and do all the shading yourself, you should be putting in quite a bit more time than that. But remember, you're going to be spreading out your time over the course of several days. I mention this because I want to make sure that you guys do a good job of managing your time. You are all capable of doing this artwork to a high level, but you will have to put in the time on a consistent basis over a several day period in order to make it happen. So far in the video, you can see that I've used some smooth shading in the leaves, used a little bit of cross hatching in this vine thing that's traveling around the head of the snake. I've used a little bit of hatching, almost in a pattern sort of way, and I'm doing that right now as well. And I've used a swirly scribble type mark to shade. I also want you guys to notice that in a lot of the shapes and forms in my artwork, I am trying to show a smooth progression from dark to light. This is a gradation in value that I want you guys to try and show in your artwork in several places. It's part of what's going to really make things appear to be three-dimensional in your artwork, even if they're just simple shapes. Right now you can see that I'm using the side of my pencil at a really low angle to the paper to try to create a mark that is kind of wide and rough. I'm filling it in on the snake. I'm not really super concerned if this mark looks like scales, but I think that it kind of does a little bit. I wasn't not really trying to go for scales, but it does just give kind of a suggestion that there's a different texture involved with this snake. I'm also really just doing it to create some visual interest, hopefully. As I was shading this, I was keeping in mind that certain shapes are supposed to look like they're on top of or behind other shapes. So I'm using the shading to try to emphasize that fact. When things are supposed to be underneath other shapes, I throw a little shading on that shape to make it look like it's a shadow being cast from the shape that is on top of it. This really helps create an illusion of space in your artwork, and we are trying to go for that a little bit. Even if it is an abstracted view of space. In my artwork, the distance and the space doesn't actually make logical sense, but I'm okay with that. I can still get a sense for how things are closer or further away than other things, and that's what I'm looking for. I actually think it's kind of interesting how, if you look close enough, the idea of space doesn't make logical sense. Here I'm going to be using circles to try to show a progression from dark to light. The small, tightly packed circles should appear darker, and then the larger circles should appear lighter in value. A lot of this is just me playing and trying to have fun. I'm just kind of searching for different designs that I can add to it, different textures that I can add through the use of different kinds of lines, trying to find ways to make certain shapes darker or lighter and seeing how they kind of stand out from each other. And that's a lot of what this project is supposed to be about. It's just supposed to be a way for you guys to explore creating a variety of marks and a variety of textures. Here you can see that I'm creating a variation of cross-hatching. My variation just includes having the lines be mostly short and just having lots of different sets of crossing lines. At a certain point, it starts to get difficult coming up with new ways to shade. Um, I really want you guys to try and push yourself to come up with new and different ways to shade, creating new marks and new textures. But it's also okay for you to repeat a type of shading that you've done in one shape and move it over to a different shape. It's okay to do that. Here I'm doing a variation of hatching. All the lines are running in the same direction. In this case, they're all just really short and arranged in a very particular way to give them the look that they have. When I was shading this shape, I ran into a little bit of a problem. The eraser marks that I had from the line of symmetry that was in the middle of the design was kind of causing me some problems with my shading. It was making it look kind of splotchy in the middle. And so that was just a tiny challenge that I had to try to figure out how to overcome. And in this case, all it really meant was that I just needed to go a little bit darker with the areas around that smudgy spot to try to make it look like it was consistent. You might say that this is a form of stippling, which is similar to pointillism that you did previously. But I would say that technically they're not really dots, they're just really, really short lines. I'm repeating myself a lot, but I really want you guys to notice how often I am filling shapes with value and shading and trying to make it appear as if it's going from dark to light. I do this a lot throughout the artwork. Most of the shapes that I shade are trying to do this. And I'm doing this as an example for you because I want you to try and incorporate that as much as you can throughout the artwork. You don't have to do it with every single shape, but I would say that most of the shapes, let's say 75% of them, should have some kind of smooth gradation in value. Some of the shapes in my design I've left mostly white, haven't shaded them at all, or maybe I just shaded them just a little bit. So that means that's okay for you to do as well. But I just want you guys to be careful. The reason why I'm leaving certain shapes white is because I want there to be some really strong contrast with the darker shapes around them. And it's nice to have a full range of values spread throughout the entire artwork. It's often good for artworks to have a little bit of white spread around the whole artwork, a little bit of black spread around the whole artwork, and different values of gray spread around the whole artwork. If I didn't have any white in my artwork, it might end up looking pretty dark and not have a lot of contrast between different shapes. But the risk of leaving too many areas white is that it often just looks unfinished. It looks like you didn't take it far enough. Okay, I've zoomed out so that you can see the whole design and the whole artwork. That's because now I'm kind of just going through lots of different areas, trying to do finishing touches, trying to touch up areas, make certain areas a little bit darker so they stand out against other areas. And now I'm trying to see the big picture a little bit more. For most of the recording and me drawing, I was kind of focused on individual shapes a lot. And I was trying to come up with interesting textures and marks for those areas. But now I kind of have to try to see how it looks all together. I want to see if it all works well together. You should try to look at it in both ways throughout the entire process of shading. Look closely at individual shapes and also look at the big picture to see how it's all working together. Okay guys, I'm calling it done. Before I end the video, I want to recap what I've done and what I have included in my artwork. You may want to write these things down because while you're working, I want you to think about these things and I want you to incorporate them in your artwork. Okay, so here's what I have. I have a symmetrical design plus additional subject matter that I've added in later. I have a variety of shading techniques using different marks and shapes. This includes a variety of textures. I have a pretty full range of values, which means that I have a little bit of white spread around the artwork. I have a little bit of black spread around the artwork, and there's several grays spread around as well. I've added gradations in value throughout the entire artwork. So that just means that in different shapes, I have the value smoothly changing from dark to light. This makes things look more like 3D forms instead of just shapes, which is also something that you need to have. I have an illusion of space through overlapping of shapes and 3D forms, and I've included shadows through my shading that also help this illusion of space. I have strong contrast where dark values are right next to light values, which makes both of them stand out really well. And I've shown control with my shading even when I'm scribbling to shade. I may be scribbling or using weird marks to do my shading, but I control it to put it pretty much exactly where I want to put it. All of these things I want you to think about and incorporate in your artwork. All right, good luck. Tackle it one piece at a time. I know you can do this.